Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe This Got Greenlit, a show where we discuss movies from our childhood, our nostalgia from watching them as kids, how they got made, and our experiences rewatching them as adults. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Warner, and joining me as always, Matthew Pelton.
Hello, hello, hello.
And today, we are taking a trip to the swamp.
We sure are.
And we are talking about the 2002 direct-to-video film, Kermit Swamp Years, with our very special guest, Jonah Bowen.
Hello. Thank
How you doing, Jonah?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, you guys. This is awesome.
I'm very
Yeah,
excited.
of course. Listen, we can't do a Muppets movie without you.
Oh,
Are you
well,
kidding?
Thank you.
Wouldn't be the same.
I'm very excited to be here to talk about it. It's one of my favorite movies. So,
Oh my God. Yeah, we're so excited to have you. This is a very, very fun episode because we have a guest, which is different
First
from
one.
the typical format. But the show will be the same, so don't worry. And yeah, just a quick note before we get started. A couple of people have said to me, and I told you, Pelton, that we are the register of our voices.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds almost identical.
It turns out we sound very similar.
Yeah, which I think is hysterical. But luckily, for this episode,
We have Jonah.
So you'll at least know who is talking when Jonah is speaking.
And I have a bit of a cold, so I sound even more like an old man. People who are listening are going to think you got some 85-year-old man to be on the radio show today.
This is how you know it's bad, because I remember after the first episode, Nick's girlfriend turned to Nick. I was like, listen, we've been dating for a while. I've known you for like over a year. I don't know who's speaking. It's your own boyfriend.
It's awesome.
She thought it was me. So now we have old smoker Jonah over here. It'd be
that's
perfect.
And my grandmother was like, I don't know who's speaking. Is it you? Is it Poppy?
That's awesome. All right, so I guess we can get into childhood stories.
Yeah.
So, Pelton, do you have anything?
For Kermit Swamp Years,
Yeah.
I will say I never even heard of this movie until my first day at college. Because for those who don't know, me and Jonah have been living together for, 3 years?
3 years.
On and off, because I did like a semester abroad, but we were roommates for 2. We still live in the same suite now. So I never heard of this movie, but this has been building up in hype. Because I've heard about this for the last 3 years, how brilliant this movie is.
It's great.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I love this movie.
Me too.
So childhood-wise, I have nothing. I've never even heard of this.
Okay, cool. Jonah, you want to give us a story?
I would say that this is probably the first movie I ever saw, maybe.
Ever?
Like, I might say it's
That's impressive.
either
That is impressive.
it's up there because it's at least the first movie I remember watching. Like,
Wow.
ever. It's that and The Wizard of Oz would be like the
Wow.
two.
Both on equal level.
Yeah, what a great pair of
Yeah.
movies.
So, like, when I think back of, like, what I would watch as a kid, whether it be on road trips, driving in the car,
Yeah.
or at home, I would watch Kermit Swamp Years, and which is pretty cool because it's, like, Kermit's introduction. It's, like, his backstory of being a kid, and so, being a tadpole. So, it was cool to watch that at that age, and then also be such a fan of the Muppets, and then to have known his origin story. So,
Right.
I remember watching it, as a kid, probably one of the first movies I ever saw, if not the first. But then I remember I loved it so much that in first grade, we had a day where we could bring in, the whole class, anybody could bring in a movie to watch, and then we were going to vote on the movie.
I thought you were going to say that you brought in Kermit.
I brought in, well, I wish that would be.
If anyone would do it.
That would be the number one.
Yeah.
But I brought in Kermit Swamp Years.
Awesome.
And, like, immediately when the teacher was like, what are you guys going to bring?
Obviously.
I knew right away.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I grabbed Kermit Swamp Years. We voted in the class on what film we were going to watch.
Okay.
Kermit Swamp Years got one vote.
Oh,
It was me.
only one?
I voted for it.
Do you remember what ended up winning?
Yeah, it was, remember those, like, Super Buddies movies about the dogs?
Oh, like the talking dogs?
Yeah.
Not even like Air Bud? Was it the Air Buddies
It
with
was-
all the little dogs?
Yeah, the
Oh,
dogs.
Those
what
were
a
awful.
What a letdown, man.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
through the Air Bud movies.
Yeah.
That dog was impressive.
Yeah.
When you compare it to Kermit Swamp Years, man, that's such a
it's-
disappointment.
I know. You know, this show is called I Can't Believe This Got Greenlit, right?
Yes.
Well-
he's a big fan.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
He believes it.
Listen.
Yeah, it's the first on the show.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that's very exciting. It's actually funny you say that because I I have a vague memory of being in middle school and having the same situation come up.
Yeah.
But I could not for the life of me remember what movie that I brought in, but someone else brought in Kermit Swamp Ears.
Really?
Yeah.
Did we go to the same school?
I don't know.
It was
That's what
Jonah.
I was gonna say. And I feel like it was like within the top 3. It was pretty popular.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. I wish I
could
went to
be
your
totally
school.
making this up, but from what I remember, it was definitely up there. I
That's
don't know.
shocking.
Yeah.
Not only did I not hear about this as a kid, no one I knew had heard about
Right.
this.
Wow.
Like I remember for this episode in preparation, I called a bunch of like old high school people, even reached out to like middle school people. I'm like, you ever heard about this Kermit thing?
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that? Like,
Oh, I got to have a conversation with these people.
Joe's got to talk
we
to
gotta
him.
talk.
I have in my notes that it's like just so apparently not on Disney Plus, and it
Right.
bothers me so much.
Oh, I wish it was.
Because if you go into like the catalog, there's all the Muppet stuff.
Yeah.
They have like
Yep.
an entire Muppets like section of
Yeah.
Disney Plus.
Pretty much
And-
everything else.
Exactly.
Except Muppets Take Manhattan, which
Well,
they should
right,
have
right, right,
on
right,
Disney
yeah.
Plus, but they
But
don't,
it's
which
one
I
of the
hate.
very few
Different episode.
Muppets properties that doesn't appear really on any streaming service.
Yeah, it's hard
and
to
it's
find.
kind of just brushed under the rug, which is very sad.
I know. It's just kind of been forgotten.
Yeah. But so as far as my childhood goes, this is another one of these things where this whole show started off the basis that during my childhood, I would have these movies that we'd get from like a Kmart, like $1,
Yep.
$3, $5, that kind of thing. And then we'd bring them either camping or on road trips with our little portable TVs.
Yeah, TV's in the back, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this was one of those movies where we got it. It was dirt cheap because direct to video, no one wanted it.
Oh, so you've seen this?
Eh,
Oh,
this,
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, okay. So for the audience, Pelton and I typically pick one movie every week.
Yes.
And now that we're bringing on guests, it's up to the guest of what is their version of a movie that like we've covered, where they can't believe it got Greenlit, but it's from their childhood. They have nostalgia around it, whatever.
Yeah, we get no say. Guest choice.
Right. But it was this rare phenomenon where Jonah said it, and I was like, dude, this is like if he didn't pick it, I would have picked it.
Wow.
Yeah. It rings very true in my mind. But so it was one of those things where I bought this movie, or my mom did, and we watched it when we were camping, so often that when I went back to this film, like I almost could quote like I knew every scene that was about to happen,
Are you serious?
like almost beat for beat.
Uh-huh.
It was actually impressive when I was watching this movie because I was like, oh, okay, and then this person comes in, and this person comes in, and this happens, and I was like, no way.
So you're both diehard Kermit Swamp Ears.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, like,
All right, well, let's
next
go. Have a good
level.
episode, guys.
In fact, I remember when Nick and I first met.
Yeah.
I think like first day
Right.
that we were hanging out,
Yeah.
we started talking about Kermit Swamp
Yeah.
Ears.
Are you serious?
Because, well, it's funny because like you had mentioned how like when we first met, I brought it
Yeah,
up
yeah.
immediately to you.
Yeah.
Because
Within the first
anything
hour.
Muppet related, yeah. I you know, like Pelton and I, as soon as we first met, I was like, all right, this guy's my roommate. I got to talk Muppets so that, you know,
Of
we
course,
know.
yeah.
That's
what every good roommate does.
Of
Right,
course,
yeah.
that's how it happens. You go to college and
To
then you-
talk Muppets.
and then with your Muppet posters, and then you start talking Muppets. This is what all 18-year-olds
Yeah.
do.
And not to forget, by the way, that our freshman year dorm, we had a puppet tent that Jonah
Right.
had.
Oh,
and
yeah.
a full Kermit puppet.
Yep.
Well,
And-
yeah, that's yeah, of course.
Yeah, and then when I showed up into the friend group, I was like, what?
Well,
Why is the desk covered by this puppet tent?
Yeah.
Who is not doing their work at this desk
Oh, 'cause,
because
yeah.
of this puppet tent?
because having a puppet tent on my desk is more productive for me than having
Obviously,
work on my
yeah.
desk.
Which I
But-
thought was so funny.
But I remember meeting Nick, and like that day we spoke about
Yeah.
Kermit Swamp Ears, and I go, "You know this?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know this." And I was like, "This is all," and that's how I knew, like, yeah, we would be friends.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was right off the bat. But
Yeah.
it's one of those movies where if you know it, you're like, oh, you're in the club.
You're in.
But if you don't
yeah.
know it, you're like, oh, we got to enlighten these people.
Yeah, I had no
to
idea.
This beautiful film.
And you know what, Pelton? Welcome to the club.
Welcome to
It
the
feels
club.
good. It feels good.
I'm glad
So-
you're here.
So moving on to like some production notes that I have in doing research for this film.
Yeah.
I found out that it was filmed. Part of it was on location in an actual swamp in Naples, Florida, which I,
I
thought was cool.
figured. Because
Yeah.
it looks very,
Yeah.
it looks
great.
beautiful.
Yeah.
But also just a little note for good old Nick over here.
Uh-oh.
It was filmed on a lot at Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Oh my, Mr. Disney over here, of course.
Do you know which parts of the film were shot?
I'm
in
sure
Disney?
most of the stuff that was indoors.
Yeah,
Like the
was
pet
probably,
store and the high
it was
school.
probably
The high school.
filmed.
Yeah.
Oh, I love you
on
guys.
that-
know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That makes me so happy. You take
Oh,
the
God,
pet
this-
store of the school. I'm like, yes, that's
He's been waiting 3 years for this conversation.
Yeah.
Washington, George Washington.
George
George
High
Washington
School.
did right.
Which is such a funny bit in itself.
Oh, it's
that
so great.
We're going to George Washington.
Yeah, I thought that was so
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, so it's filmed on Disney lot, which I thought was great. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the acquisition of Muppets happen like way later?
Nah,
Or
it
was that early?
No, it was actually right prior to Jim Henson's death.
Okay.
Right
Oh.
before 1990, like right around that time. I don't know
Oh,
the
no way.
exact year.
I didn't realize
Jim
that.
Henson sold the Muppets to Disney before he passed away.
Oh.
It's often it's a misconception that the Muppets were sold to Disney after Jim Henson passed away.
Right.
But Jim Henson was in the works selling it to Disney before
Yeah.
it even passed. They were going to be doing all this stuff at Disney
Mm.
that Jim Henson was planning
Yeah.
with the Muppets. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1990. But no, it was sold to Disney.
I
in
didn't. Yeah,
1990.
that's a
Yeah,
again,
no
common
idea.
misconception. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
But so it's directed by a guy named David Grumple. Am I getting that right? I don't know if you know that.
I sure hope so.
director. Yeah, David Grumple.
I think so. I
Yeah.
don't want to say
Either way.
100%.
But so he's mainly a Henson guy, and he does a lot of the direct-to-video, like directing. So
This
he
is,
did
like,
a
his
lot of
thing.
this is his thing. He does a
Okay.
lot of the direct-to-video Henson stuff, and just a lot of kids programming. Like he does a lot of like direct-to-video, like Sesame Street, like
Okay.
a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's in his wheelhouse, which is it makes sense when you watch the movie. The screenwriters also worked on a lot of the Henson stuff. They did Sesame Street,
Okay.
a couple, a lot of the puppet stuff, which is really
yeah.
cool. And
So-
one of the writers, his name is Joseph Mazzarino. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
yeah.
he
He's also a puppeteer.
He's also a
So
puppeteer.
that's my dad.
Is the voice of Goggles.
Yes, he
Oh,
is.
So he's one of the
really?
writers. Yeah,
Oh,
which I
okay,
thought was pretty
gotcha.
cool.
So it's like your usual crew for a movie
Mhm.
like this. Okay.
And we have the wonderful Steve Whitmire as Kermit.
Yes.
Which was this one of the last times he did this?
One of the
or
last times he was a puppeteer.
He
No.
performed as Kermit.
No,
Or
he
how long
perf-
did he
His
perform?
last film with Kermit, I believe, was 2014 Muppets Most Wanted.
Oh,
Okay.
so it's still a while after
Yeah,
this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what happened? You could tell the story. What happened with the whole Whitmire getting booted, or like he quit, or I don't exactly know what happened.
Yeah, I don't want to say like all of just because I don't want to say anything wrong. That's,
Sure,
that's not
fair. Yeah.
exactly.
Just the basic.
But essentially, he was pushing back on some things. I don't know details
Right.
fully. But I believe that he was asked to leave.
Oh, he
because
was?
He was pushing back on things. I've always loved his work. He's worked with Jim Henson
Yeah.
Right.
since the early days. I also have a lot of respect for Matt Vogel, who is current Kermit.
Okay.
He was Constantine
Yeah.
in Muppets Most Wanted.
I remember having this
Um,
conversation with you where we were talking about it, and you were like, yeah, they asked the guy who was supposed to be like purposefully bad Kermit
Right.
To
do
be
the
Kermit.
actual Kermit voice after Whitmire, which I thought was so funny.
Right.
Just it's crazy.
So Whitmire wasn't just the voice of Kermit. He also did like a lot of the creative stuff as well.
Yeah, he was involved with Muppets since the early days, since
Okay.
he was young, working with Jim Henson.
Gotcha.
Also, to say a great quote by Carol Spinney, who was the original Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, who actually now is performed by Matt Vogel as well.
Oh.
Big Bird is Matt Vogel. Matt Vogel kind of worked under Carol for many years, and
Wow.
Carol taught him.
Okay.
Now Matt Vogel took over. But to quote Carol Spinney, the voice is only 10% of the work.
yeah.
90% is the actual puppeteering of it. So he would always say that. He would say, yeah, they're the voice of it, but also they're the puppeteer. They're like
Dude,
the 90%.
Yeah, that's so interesting you said that,
Yeah.
because I was watching a lot of the behind the scenes videos
Yeah.
from this movie, and just seeing the guys just like laying on the ground
Yeah.
and the just
Yeah.
beating down heat and just like doing their thing, and
Yeah.
they're just so professional, but they're
Yeah,
also
it's a
having
lot,
so
like-
much fun.
Oh, they would have a
And
blast.
oh my god, it looks like such a it looked like such a fun environment, and it almost reminded me of like the early this is like a lesser comparison, but like the early like Star Wars sets,
Uh-huh.
in the sense that like they just had no idea what they were doing. Well, I mean they do, but they had like no idea what they were doing. They were just having fun. Like they were doing their thing. They were like, this is awesome. It was just like that kind of energy,
goofy,
even though they were professional. It was like, oh my God, they just looked like they were having a blast.
Oh, they would have. It's such difficult work, but they love it so much.
Yeah.
And that's the weird part about it is it's such a massive amount of work for something that, without thinking about it, seems so like easy and goofy. You know what I mean?
That's why so many people think, oh, puppeteering is just like. I wish folks listening at home could see my hand right now, but just blah 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 blah. That's what my hand's doing, but in my voice, blah 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 blah. But it's so difficult how you operate the puppet because it's not just just moving your hand around, flap your hand around. It takes such a rhythm to it.
Yeah, it's like an art form.
Yeah, it's a science. Because
also you think of like the Kermit has like all these like really specific facial like contortions and expressions that like that Kermit does. And it's just
and you have like little moments that again I don't know a lot about puppeteering. I only know about it because Jonah.
Right, same.
Yeah. But there was a couple
of my
moments. There's a couple moments in this movie where like a character would be shooting his arms up and his eyes are moving and his body's moving. I'm like, that must be like 4 to 5 different people for one puppet.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Some puppets take several people to operate.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Some which are amazing are like you see all these movements and some of them are one person too.
Which is wild.
Even like you see the eyes moving. Well, there might be something inside the head of the puppet that's allowing the eyes to move around too. So they have to be operating. Talk about like moving so many fingers at once. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, if you think about like this, if you really think about the science behind it, it can be kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's again, it's so cool to see because they're so in their element.
Yeah,
but they're also like not even thinking because they're just having so much fun. Like they're just so happy.
Yeah, they're just making Kermit Swamp
so cool. Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. So anyways, moving on. So the original voice of Goggles and Croaker were actually swapped.
Oh,
so they initially,
really?
they initially tried out the roles in the opposite roles.
Yeah.
And then they were like, let's just try it out. And then they ended up sticking with the people who are now those voices, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
They like were initially cast as the others.
And
they were just like, haha, we're going to switch.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then that's really all I have for production. It's one of those movies where it's hard to find a lot of stuff similar to like the Nickelodeon,
like Boy Cried Werewolf and stuff like that.
It's hard to find because it is direct to
DVD,
and they didn't have any notes on budget and box office because it didn't exist really.
Well, yeah, it just was a straight home release.
Right. So it's tough. But you have a note?
Okay, so keep in mind, again, I've never seen this movie. And to be honest, this is a sad confession because again, I've known Jonah for 3 years. This might be my first Muppets movie ever.
Well, we'll have to change that.
Because I think the only thing I've seen before this was like the Muppets Haunted Mansion that came out like last year, maybe? That's it.
Oh, you don't know how excited I am to show you. Well, honestly, like people have asked me and they've said, oh, so-and-so's never seen the Muppets. How do you feel about that? And I'm like, that's awesome. Why? Because I can introduce them to so much of the Muppets.
You get the chance to fix it.
Well, that's recently, my girlfriend Maddie and a couple of our friends were up in Boston, and we all watched a couple episodes of The Muppet Show with Jonah because he was just like, dude, I want to show you guys this. This is amazing.
I think we watched a couple episodes
we did.
too.
Yeah, we like made time for it, sat down, watched like 2 episodes?
2 episodes,
and it was such a fun time.
Yeah, Elton John and Steve Martin.
It was so great.
I just didn't grow. I grew up with Sesame Street, to be fair.
Right.
But I never did the world. In fact, I found out who Kermit was probably when I was like in middle school. So
that
it was
is
almost
psychotic.
It took so long. So it was almost like too late.
Yeah.
I was like animal, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like
your intro to Kermit was like the Lipton memes.
I mean, probably, yeah.
Meanwhile, I was walking in the 6th grade with a Kermit and Fozzie backpack on. I remember walking in there, and my parents were like, "Aren't you worried you're gonna get bullied?" And I was like, "It's Kermit and Fozzie."
Did you say 6th grade, Jonah? You walked into school like that yesterday.
Well, I do. That's true. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So the point is, Muppets has never been in my world. So I was watching this, and I took a couple of notes, but really they're just 2 questions. But keep in mind, they could be really silly questions for Muppets fans, but I don't know.
That's okay. I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, so one, when the movie starts, and also at the way end of the movie, most in the beginning, you see adult Kermit come back to the swamp.
Yes.
He's coming home.
Yes.
And immediately I was very taken off guard because he's riding like a moped.
Yeah.
He's just on a scooter.
Yeah.
Is that a thing he does? Or why? What's going on?
He's known for riding a bike, like a bicycle, which is pretty cool because a lot of people will see that and they'll go like, for instance, in the original Muppet movie,
Yeah.
at the beginning, not the very beginning, but towards the beginning of the film, you see him riding a bike. And people are like, Kermit has legs?
I didn't know that
And,
either.
That's awesome.
And I think even like in Seth Meyers' stand-up special, he made a joke about
Oh,
that.
there you go.
That's
So it's not
great.
out of the blue for him
so-
to be on a vehicle.
No,
right?
it's not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's also I think it's funny because he's on a moped coming from L.A.
Yeah,
being
which
this
is
big movie
awesome.
star, and
Yeah.
he's upgraded from his bike.
his bike,
yeah,
yeah.
which is awesome.
Because he was on the bike at the beginning of the Muppet movie,
Right.
which
Oh, there you
shows the
go.
story of him getting to Hollywood.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. That's a
Yeah.
great point.
Dude, that's how
Good.
you know. Listen, if you ever
comes
see me and Nick on a bike, how you know we made it is if a year later you see us on a moped.
1 year.
1 year.
We get all of our success.
And
365 days.
And if you see me
Yeah,
on
correct.
a moped, if I'm on a moped, that means I went into retirement.
Yeah,
That's how you-
Jonah's done.
That's how you saw me. Yeah.
Okay, then my only other question, and it wasn't for every shot, which made it even more weird,
Okay.
but for a lot of the shots where it was just puppets, or
Yep.
maybe even sometimes the dog, humans not necessarily, but it was just the puppets. I noticed a lot of the time they were only in like the bottom third of the frame. They were very low in the frame.
Yeah.
It was a lot of empty space of just woods and stuff, or just like a road. Is there like a puppeteering reason for that? Or the puppet's not big enough? Or like, is that just random? Was that just a choice?
You know, I don't know how the set was for this film
Yeah.
in particular. I do know that for the Muppet Show itself, it was that the set was always built to be elevated. So
Oh.
they would actually be, so it would fit the frame perfectly. They would have the set above them so they could stand while operating the puppets.
Oh,
So
that's
the-
interesting.
So the entire set is built above them.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was for this film. It might have been that, like Nick said, since they were filming on
in like
location
relocation.
for at
Yeah.
parts of the film, they couldn't have the set above them.
Yeah.
So that might be the
That's
reason.
you're probably lying on the
I
ground.
can
Yeah.
chime in for that. That's exactly
Oh,
it.
there you go.
They were a lot of the behind the scenes shows that I actually have a note on this where it's this weird crop.
Yes,
right? Where it's
bizarre.
like weirdly really tight
Yep.
on the puppets.
Yeah.
And it's because a lot of it was on location.
There you go.
And so you have this weird thing where you have to get enough to where you have the background, you have the puppet, but you also aren't getting the sticks, you aren't getting the hand,
Yeah.
you aren't
Right.
getting the bottom half.
Right.
So it creates for this weird, like they're either in the bottom corner of the
Yep.
frame or it's super close in on
Yeah.
them. So it's actually funny you bring that up because I also made like a very like notable mark on
there
my
you
notes
go.
of like this is something that I want to talk about because it is so interesting to see because you watch the movie and you're like this is weird and
It was a
like
little
you're
off-putting
seeing
at
it as
first.
an adult you're like this it's off-putting
yeah.
and then you watch the behind the scenes and you're like oh there's like 4 dudes laying on top of each other trying to get these
Yeah.
puppets next to each
Yeah.
other just for one shot of it super up close from the back for like
Yeah,
3 seconds.
That's all they can do.
It's so impressive. Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's exactly what it is.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, and so just getting to the plot, I just want to make a quick note that the overall concept of this movie is just so awesome. Right?
Yep.
You have this already pre-established Kermit the Frog. He is
Yes.
in the zeitgeist. He is in the popular culture.
Very
Yep.
famous figure.
Very famous figure.
Yeah.
And now he's coming back to his roots. He's coming back to his swamp, right? And you get to see this origin story. It's just so like impressive and exciting. And it's just like when I rewatch it, was just bathed in nostalgia for me, just because it
Yep.
was like again, I remember watching this as a kid and then growing up, I think I saw this before I saw the Muppet movies.
Oh,
so it was almost
really?
like I saw it in sequential order, kind of like the Star Wars, like
Yeah,
watching
you did
backwards.
prequels
Yeah.
first.
But so it's this thing where it just made me so giddy watching this movie again. Not only for the nostalgia, but just the pure concept of it alone
Yeah.
is just so awesome to
It
me.
is a cool idea.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And also, someone who doesn't know a lot of Muppets, I don't think I ever fully realized that Kermit in the world of the Muppets is like a famous star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a celebrity, like, in life.
Right.
Like, his Instagram account is verified. Like,
That's
he's
Yeah.
gone.
awesome.
Like, that's the whole thing that Jim Henson wanted to do also was Jim Henson never wanted the puppets to be seen not moving and not alive.
Mhm.
He
Oh, really?
always, like, he wanted them to be real at all times,
Yeah.
essentially. That doesn't mean to say that, like, because Jim Henson would do interviews with Kermit, like, on his lap, and you would see
Okay.
the puppeteer. But Jim Henson would always say, The puppet is the interesting part, not me.
Right.
So even though
Yeah.
I'm right here with the puppet, your eyes are being drawn to the puppet.
Kermit, yeah.
So Kermit, is supposed to be like
Okay, gotcha.
Mm.
Yeah, it took me like
Figure in
halfway through the movie. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think I'm missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. And just one more quick note on cinematography. It's a very flat, very like
Yes.
early 2000s vibe, which was so cool because it fits the like this is our childhood. Like
Yeah.
this is what they made this is what movies looked like when we were a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't get that even in the 90s. You don't get that in the 90s. You don't get that in the 2010s. You get that only in the early
It's a weird
2000s,
time
which is
period.
like again, the whole reason the show exists is
Yeah.
to revisit these movies and seeing that cinematography on the screen was just so awesome. It was just like overwhelmed me with that nostalgia.
Yeah, and they had a couple moments. Like they had the one who turns out just to be a science teacher, but where the science teacher is like first revealed he's super evil and it's all red and blue. It's like
Yeah.
super dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, this evil
Yeah.
laugh.
Uh-huh.
Like this movie rocks.
Which
Yeah.
is what's so funny because he's just trying to get frogs
Yeah.
for,
It's a
for
very
his
normal
science
thing.
class.
They
So
just dramatize it.
it's funny to me to think about like a science teacher who's so evil about getting the frogs.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay, now before we continue the plot, I have a
Yeah.
quick side question. Again, so not a Muppet guy.
Go for it.
And also, I did not go to a public high school. I went to a private high school, so a very different experience.
Same.
So in early 2000s, dissecting a frog was very normal.
Yes.
Does that still happen?
It did for my school.
For me,
We were a private Catholic school, which like didn't even have
Oh.
like a soccer field, and we
Okay.
like not even like a student parking lot.
Yeah.
And we dissected.
Oh,
Well,
you did?
actually, no. I'm so sorry. We didn't dissect frogs. We dissected pigs. So that
What?
was interesting. Yeah.
Not Miss Piggy.
No, Miss Piggy.
No.
How big a pig
Like a
are we
little
talking?
baby pig.
Oh,
It was
That's
so-
so
it was
much
so
worse.
frightening.
I'm sorry, Kermit.
That's-
That's
Did you have
so
to do
much
it?
worse.
That's awful.
In my like, it was not even like we were seniors either. I think we were like sophomores or juniors.
Oh, you
We
said
were
this was high
young.
school.
Yeah, we were like 15, 16.
Oh my God.
And we were like cutting these little guys open, and it smelled like that like fourth floor. Cause it was only a 4-floor building.
Yeah.
And that fourth floor was where all the science classes happened. And there were 2 classes that did it. And that whole floor smelled like just chemicals, and it made no one wanted to go up there. Everyone had like these little like like the
nose
corny
plugs
little
thing?
nose plugs,
Yeah.
like the wooden ones.
Yeah.
We had those, and they looked so goofy, but everyone went up there. Like 4 or 5 people within the span of a week just vomited like violently
Oh my
because of
God.
how horrible that
Oh my
smell was.
God.
It was the
Wow.
smell of like rotting guts, or not like rotting, but like
Open
the guts.
guts,
Yeah, the
yeah.
guts of the pig.
Yeah.
And then also the chemicals that it's like being bound in this like this plastic wrap before you open it and then dissect it. It was awful. So anyways, I don't know if frogs are still a thing.
They
but
upgraded.
They upgraded to pigs.
Wow.
Jesus.
We had frogs.
You did have a frog.
We did. I was in 8th grade, and we dissected frogs in middle school. And
In middle school?
yeah, and I remember
Wait, wasn't this one middle school or was it high school?
this was
It's-
freshman year of high school.
Okay, so right around the same
Yeah.
time. Okay.
So yeah, I remember the day that we dissected frogs, and actually the day that we did it, all I could think about was Kermit Swamp.
I was about to
Years.
say.
And I was like, "This is terrible. I can't do it." I actually made. We got partners for it.
Okay.
I made my partner do it.
You didn't do
my
it?
I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do this. Also, like,
I don't blame you.
yeah, I couldn't look at the frog. Granted, like, the frogs were not alive when we like
Well,
in the
yeah.
Muppet, like in Kermit Swamp Years. But this was I could not do it. It made me. It's gross. It made me not want to eat pickles
Yeah.
because the
Oh my
frog looked. The
Oh,
frog,
no.
Frog looked like pickles, and I
That's
was
why.
like,
Yeah, the only thing that was going through my head when we were dissecting them was what I had for lunch that day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was rough.
Now,
Yeah.
be
It was
honest, did
really
you
rough.
try to start a chant like "Let the frogs go"?
I should
Let the
have.
frogs go.
If they were alive, 100%, I would. And I was cool with my science teacher. Like, I liked this
Okay.
guy. He wasn't a super evil villain like in Kermit Swamp Years. So I might have even mentioned him. Like, dude, this is like
Like Kermit Swamp Years.
man. Come on.
He's like my least
We
favorite
can't do
movie.
this. Yeah. Or my favorite.
Teacher's a hero.
Except the ending was bad.
Yeah, the ending sucked.
Yeah, because the frogs.
Movie inspired him to
Not
become
to
a science
spoil
teacher.
anything, Kermit lives.
Oh, rats.
Actually, yeah, we are going to be doing some spoiling, so just a heads up for
Whoops.
Kermit Swamp Years 2002.
If
Anyways,
you haven't seen it
yeah,
yet,
buried
pause
Muppets movie.
this live on the air stream
yeah.
and go watch the movie. Okay, so going into the plot. So we open with the credits over shots of the swamp, which is again very early 2000s nostalgia.
Yes.
And dude, you know it's gonna be a good movie when you have opening credits.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
name a movie that has opening credits that is bad. You can't do it.
can't.
It's impossible.
Right now, I'm trying. I'm sitting here. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying. I can't do
it
it.
doesn't exist.
It must exist. There's
It
no way
doesn't
that's
exist.
true.
Dude, okay.
I challenge
Obviously,
that.
sure. But like 98% of movies that have opening credits are typically good.
Percentage.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Because the
Good
one I think of
percentage.
the most is like the early Spider-Man movies. Because they have opening credits too. They have like the really cheesy opening credits, but those rock.
Yeah.
I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Is
That's what I'm
there a
saying.
movie?
Every Scorsese movie. Well, not to be like the film bro, but like those movies are good.
But
You know what I mean?
Put
Yeah,
this
I think
at
you're
that
right.
level.
Every
Yeah,
right,
what do you mean? It's the same
yeah.
level.
Yeah.
Shutter Island, Kermit Swamp Ears,
Goodfellas, Kermit
Departed.
Swamp Ears. Exactly. Yeah, they're all right up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my point. Is like you don't have this. You already know this one's gonna be a banger when you see those opening credits and you have the like funky music and you have the shots of the swamp and then you have the CGI fly Horace DeFly. His name is Horace DeFly, which is awesome. So he comes in full CG fly, early 2000 CG. This dude is coming in with his accent. He's clearly from the swamp. This dude is introducing us to this movie. You don't see him otherwise. He
Nope,
introduces
never
you
again,
and
to the
he
end.
leaves you. He is the bookends of this movie.
Yeah.
Which
now,
is
this
awesome.
like an established character, or is this just for this movie?
No.
He
just
just
this movie.
exists for
He's
this
never
movie.
seen again?
No,
Yeah, he's
never.
only seen in this movie, but he's supposed to be like a fly that Kermit knows in the swamp.
Yeah.
Because-
I figured that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that it's not a puppet. I love that
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
just
full
a
CG.
early 2000s CG fly.
Yeah.
And then Kermit kind of catches him in his mouth, and then we realize, all right, yeah, he's coming home from L.A., big movie guy.
Big movie star.
And
yeah.
so he's visiting home, and then he basically is like, all right, here's my story.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we get into it. And then cut to, I actually, just a quick note on that, I think it's funny because they then go into like the prequel, essentially, which is the movie.
Yes.
And in one of the behind the scenes videos, there it's like Kermit in like a makeup chair.
Uh-huh.
And he basically is like, yeah, they're doing my makeup to play myself as a younger Kermit. Which I think is so funny, the like
Are you
weird
serious?
like inception of that. Like the young Kermit you see in this movie is supposed to be that actor, quote unquote actor,
Unquote, yeah.
is supposed to be like present day LA Kermit just in makeup to look younger.
This movie's
Yeah.
so
Which
weirdly
is
meta.
awesome.
Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
Kermit's
cool.
even,
a
like,
movie star.
they even end with like the fake bloopers. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
they really did
It's
this?
so-
Yeah.
Dude, it's so I love it. I love it. But yeah, so he hangs out with his two buddies. You got Goggles, which
Yep.
he has glasses. He kind of looks like me actually.
can
Little
relate
skinny
to you.
guy.
I can relate to Goggles on so many levels.
Yeah, he's a very anxious frog.
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, he's a toad.
Yeah,
which is a
that's the
big
one
plot
yeah,
point.
exactly.
They keep
Can't get that
mentioning
wrong.
it.
Yeah. And then Croaker, who's like this macho man, like I'm this sly guy.
Biggest jumper in the swamp.
Yeah.
yeah, best
Yeah.
jumper.
He's the highest jump.
Yeah.
So they're kind of just hanging out in the swamp. They're just kicking it. They're like, dude, we're living our best life.
Yeah.
And Kermit's like, guys, I think I want more.
Yeah, he's like,
We
check
need
this
to,
out.
Yeah, we need to get out of the swamp. And so they go to leave the swamp, and then the main villain, who, spoiler alert, turns out to just be a biology teacher.
Yeah, some lame biology teacher.
And he's like set up as this like big bad villain. He's a frog catcher on the hunt for frogs, and he finds them.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's this weird, like, clear 2002 dynamic between him and the woman.
Uh-huh.
Like, he's
Oh,
with this
yeah.
lady. It's like his assistant scientist, and it's like these weird, like, gender dynamics where he's like, "Come on, lady, like, yeah, like I'm the boss man.
You want to be a real
here."
scientist one
Yeah,
day?
and it's like it made me so uncomfortable. I was
Yeah.
like, this is the only thing that doesn't hold up in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like that was rough.
It does do a good job making him evil.
Right?
You can give
yeah,
it that.
he is a piece of poopy.
Yeah. Good
so-
save.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, so he goes and he finds the frogs. He hears them talking,
Yeah.
and then he goes and gets them. But they get away because Arnie the alligator comes
Right.
and saves them.
Yeah.
And then Arnie's like, dude, you guys can't talk to humans. That's the one
The
caveat.
one rule.
Yeah.
The one rule.
Yeah.
So
'Cause wait, what was the reason? What was it? They'd take you,
Oh.
cook you, and eat you
Eat
alive.
you alive, and then they make
Alive.
the joke of like, how can they eat us alive when we're dead? And they're like, they
have their-
they have
they
their
have a
ways.
way.
They have their ways.
So
Which
then
is
we
an
have
awesome
this.
joke.
Then we have this interesting kind of sticking with Muppets fashion where Kermit sings, but he sings to the stars, which
Yeah,
I think
which-
is awesome.
Again,
Uh-huh.
as not a Muppets guy, he started singing. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I was
I was gonna
stunned.
say it almost threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
And then I had to take a step back and be like, oh wait, this is a Muppets movie.
Yeah, I almost, to be honest with you, I'm not a big musical guy either. So he started singing, and I almost went like, uh-oh.
Yeah, here we go.
But then sure enough, I think there's only like one or two.
No,
really.
yeah, they're not bad.
There's
and they're
not a
both
lot.
fun.
Yeah.
Like, this
I
one
like
sets
them.
up Kermit,
Yeah.
like his whole shtick about the star.
And the star comes back.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
And then the other one's just a spunky, like, don't leave his place. And we'll get to that. But so he has a sentimental moment with his mom, and she tells him to, like, follow his star. Like, that's, like, that's the big theme. Is like, follow your star, you're going to be successful. And then turns out, he gets to L.A., he does his thing. But I want to make a note, because this is one of, and I made this note in my notes I have for this movie, that this is one of probably 4 or 5 scenes where when I thought of this movie, these scenes stuck out to me for some reason or another, where I'm just like, this is what I remember about this movie. I cannot tell you why. So it's this weird, like, all of the scenes that I'll mention, because I'll keep saying, this is another one of those.
Yeah.
But so all of these scenes, I remember the scene, but I could never place, like, it was one of those, like, fever dream scenes where I would think about it sometimes and be like, I don't know where that is from.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I rewatched it, I was like, oh my God.
It
was from this movie.
Yeah.
It was from this movie. And
Yeah.
I had this, like, freak out moment, because I was like, I cannot believe that it was from this.
Yeah.
I could never place it. And it was like,
What scene?
it just, like, clicked. This one where he's singing to the stars.
Oh, the singing.
Yeah, they're, like, dark. I, like, always remember, like, Kermit, like, sitting on a branch or, like, a rock or something.
Really?
In, like, darkness. And I think it was because the darkness, because you never really see him in darkness.
True.
And then he's singing, and, like, it was one of those things where it just stuck out.
I thought you were going to say what he's trying to set the table. And he has all his brothers and stuff.
That was
I always
another one.
remember that
Yeah, that one's interesting.
Bedtime. They all run on.
Because that was one that I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I kind of didn't think about it. And then the second the movie was done, I was like, wait, how many puppeteers were there? Because there's a lot of puppets.
A lot.
Yeah.
To do that scene, that must have been a lot of
A
work.
ton, right?
Yeah. I will say that a lot of them pick up slack, because I know a lot of them do, like, multiple, especially in, like,
Oh,
that
they don't
frog
do, like,
tank.
it's not one
yeah,
person
they do
per.
a couple. But yeah, so
Oh,
the
frog
next
tank
day,
too, yeah.
the next day they all leave the swamp, and they run into this big bullfrog named Blotch.
Yeah.
And so Blotch is just a bully. This is his character trope or type or whatever.
Yeah.
He's just a big bully. And he starts beating up Goggles.
Like, more than I thought he would.
Yeah.
He's like
he
fully
really
punching
destroys this
Yeah.
guy. And they end up fighting in the road. So they make it
Yeah.
out of the swamp, and they're like, we've never been in this territory before. And so they make it out into the road, and a guy, like, picks them up, puts them in a box, and he says, like, it's his lucky day. So, like, we're trying to figure out, who's this dude? Why is he
What's going on?
And then Kermit and Croaker go to find Goggles, and then we find out that Croaker has lost his hop because he gets run over by this guy.
Yeah, he fully gets run over by a car.
Yeah.
Which,
And it's okay. But
which is one of my favorite jokes in the entire film. The joke is he gets run over by this truck. Kermit goes, how you feeling? And he's got tire tracks across his chest. And he goes, just a little tired.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I was like, that is
Genius.
a brilliant joke. I love that joke.
But yeah, so Goggles and Blotch, they end up in this pet shop with a group of these, like, jazzy, mellow frogs.
Yeah.
And there is just all this group that they all kind of, like, look the same, but they're like these hey bro kind of guys. Yeah, hey. And then you have this, like, which I thought was so funny, a cut to of these turtles. And they're literally turtle versions of Statler and Waldorf, which is so funny. So they're
Are those
two,
the critic people?
Yeah, the
Is
two
that what
old
it
guys
is?
that
Two
sit
old
up in the
guys that-
balcony.
Oh, okay.
that
Who make a
heckle.
cameo in this movie.
Yeah.
Young versions. of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
great. But so then they get moved
the
to
snake
their
box.
own, they get moved to their own tank.
Yeah.
And then there's a snake.
Uh-oh.
And then there's this whole dilemma. And correct me if I'm wrong, do they scare the snake off? Or
uses his
poisons
poison
them,
gland. 'Cause
right?
he's a toad, so he uses
Yeah.
his poison glands.
Yeah.
And he helps out a friend. It's like the first time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, Kermit and Croaker, right? They almost get captured by the, like, weird bad guy.
Yeah.
And this dog named Pilgrim saves them, which is awesome. And then Pilgrim tags along, and she
Yeah.
I think, she.
says that she can, like, help track down Goggles because
Yes.
her sense of smell.
Yeah. Now, we'll say, speaking about this dog, again, just to reiterate, not a Muppets guy whatsoever. So, just also, I was going to kind of say this for final notes, but I guess it kind of comes up now. So, it's very clear to me that you two like this more than I did. Because I like this movie, but I don't think I loved it.
Sure.
And I was really liking it until this dog came to the movie.
Yeah.
That's when I really started to lose me a little bit.
That's understandable.
Yeah, what's the character's name again?
Pilgrim?
Pilgrim. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pilgrim annoyed me a lot.
Yeah. It was an
Yeah.
annoying dog.
It was
Yeah.
a very annoying dog, which I know was also kind of like the purpose of it.
Right.
But I think as like watching it only as an adult and having no connection to it, I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
like I was really enjoying this.
Yeah. That's understandable. I also thought it kind of sounded like Vanellope, the voice actor from Wreck-It Ralph, a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
it's
a
kind of
little
what
bit.
that's just kind of
Yeah.
what it reminded me of. It's not the same person because I looked it up, but yeah. So that's it's understandable. This is kind of where it takes a
Yeah,
dip
it
because
takes
it
a
is a
little bit of
very
a dip.
annoying dog.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Pilgrim takes him to a farm, which I just want to make a quick note about, and we'll move on. But there's this weird POV shot of Kermit running away from a pig.
Oh yeah.
And then at the end, Kermit says that he hopes he never sees one for the rest of his life. And it's like kind of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to,
I didn't even
to
catch that.
Miss Piggy.
This
movie's
Which it was
genius.
so
One of the
genius.
greatest jokes.
So funny.
I know.
of
Wait
the
a
film.
minute.
I hope
Yeah.
I never see one of those again.
Yeah.
And it's Miss
great.
Piggy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Wow.
it's so genius because you have these little things that you don't even notice unless you're really like looking for it.
Yeah,
or
because I
thinking
didn't know
about it.
until just now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. The writing of this is amazing, especially for a direct to DVD.
right.
Yeah.
It's so impressive.
Again, I know obviously I just said I don't like it as much as you guys, but was genuinely pretty impressed.
especially for the films we've watched so far.
Especially the movies we watched so far.
But yeah. So Goggles and Blotch, they escape their tank and they go to leave, right? They go to leave the pet shop. And then you
Yeah.
have this rabbit,
My favorite scene.
right? Yep. And the
love
rabbit
this.
rabbit is another one of these things. Like I was saying before. I knew about it, could not place
really?
where it was
Uh-huh.
from.
You remember the
Then I
rabbit?
remembered it,
Yeah.
yeah. But so then he sings this song and he's backed up by the frogs and the other animals.
Yep.
And they basically say that they love being pets and that they should stay.
That's the end goal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And basically by the end of the song, they're convinced to stay. They're like,
Yeah.
we're gonna be pets.
Yeah, because they
That's
were
it.
gonna weren't they out of the tank? They were fully
Yeah,
gonna break
they
out.
they were ready to leave. And Goggles, who's so anxious too, is once he realizes what it's like to be a pet, he's like, "Oh, this is perfect."
Yeah, this is the
Which,
life.
As somebody with OCD and anxiety, I can relate to Goggles so much.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think it's such a funny character
Mhm.
in general to have.
I can relate to Croaker. I'm not gonna explain. Pilgrim tracks down.
Uh-oh.
So Pilgrim tracks down the truck and
I agree. He is a croaker.
and follows it.
to see him off air.
And oh please. And then the bad guy, the science teacher guy.
Yeah,
I'm
big
calling him
evil
the bad guy,
biology
yeah.
teacher.
And he basically tells the dog catcher to go after Pilgrim, right? He's like, go chase that dog. And then then we have this little shot of Kermit running into a young Jim Henson, which I think
forgot
is
about
awesome.
that.
Yeah.
it's a little cameo.
So he is a little cameo. It's pretty cool.
and
he's
then again,
like-
this is post Jim Henson's death, right?
Yeah.
At this point,
Yeah.
gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
So again, it's the origin. It's really really fun.
I love that they threw that in there.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it was
great.
a nice little
Right?
But yeah, so then they end up going into the to a movie theater, right? To
Right.
hide from the dog catcher. And
Yes.
it's one of those it's another one of those like wink wink nudge nudge of Kermit is like, I want to make movies. This is my lifelong
Yeah.
passion. This is where he finds his spark.
Oh right.
He's
See,
following
again,
his
I,
star.
I forgot
Yeah.
he's even a
Yeah.
movie star. Yeah.
And then they watch like this duel happen on the screen. And then the actual young Statler and Waldorf are in that
there.
theater.
Yep.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is really cool. But yeah, just another like genius moment where they're like, all right, we're incorporating the origin story, but also it's humor and also you
Yeah.
get the payoffs at the end of this movie, and it's not just for other movies.
Yeah.
There's just so many elements going on at once.
See, now that like we're going over the plot with two people that know what they're talking about, I can see how being a Muppets fan, this movie would rock.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, this is really well done. if you know what's going on.
And once you watch the other ones, you're gonna be like, oh, this is why it's so
Exactly.
good.
Now if I continue my Muppets journey,
Which,
Which will
I
happen.
can show you. And I love when Kermit says he's looking up at the screen and he turns to the other two and he says, I want to do this one day.
Yeah.
And that's so cool because
Yeah.
he does.
he does.
Yeah, it's like a very surreal. Also, all of us being in an art school where we see some form of content. Like
We
when
have
I
the same
watched
thing.
Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah.
I turned to the person next to me, which was no one. I turned to an empty seat and was like, "Guys, I'm gonna do this one
Yeah.
day."
He was in a theater alone.
Exactly.
It's really weird. Actually, there's no movie playing either. It's
No,
just static.
I was
Yeah.
staring at a blank.
Yeah, they're like,
wall.
sir, you need to leave. He's like, I'm gonna do this one day.
I'm going to do
Yeah,
it.
mark my words.
I know I will.
But
Make
so,
the best static around.
but yeah, so the third scene, I think of 4 or 5 of that like weird nostalgia I can't place.
Yeah,
is the
okay.
next scene that happens. So Pilgrim, Kermit, and Croaker, they get to the pet store, and Croaker gets his hop back. And
Yeah,
he
he's
breaks
back.
in because they kind of have to get up to this window that's kind of up high. This is another one of those scenes where I was like, I remember this vividly, but I couldn't place.
Oh,
where it was.
really?
Yeah. So yeah, they break into the pet store, and Goggles and Blotch are taken along with the other frogs to what they call George Washington in the movie. So like, we're going to George Washington, and they think it's this great thing.
Yeah, you don't really know what it is either.
Right, but and then you find out it's the bad guy. And then it's the big reveal of like, oh, this guy is just a biology teacher and he needs frogs to dissect for the class. But yeah, so they get taken to George Washington, and Kermit and Croaker volunteer themselves to go to George Washington because they've now broken in to the pet store, and they kind of get the attention of the mate. Was his name Wilson?
Yeah,
I think Wilson.
Yep.
They arrive with Pilgrim at a school.
Yes.
Right? And so then there's this montage of them running from Wilson.
Okay, wait, hang on. Because before we get to the montage, because the movie gets crazy all of a sudden, do you remember how they break away from Wilson? Because they're in a box.
Oh, yeah.
Jonah, do you remember? You want to tell us how?
Yeah, they start a fire.
They start a fire in the box.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about that.
Smoke comes out of the box, and Wilson sees this smoke coming out of the box and just throws it on the ground, and then is looking in complete shock, like how the heck did they start a fire in this box?
Which is bananas.
Yeah.
So they start a real fire.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I watched like at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I paused it. I'm like, that did not just happen. There's no way. Just start a fire.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I think even Croaker says to Kermit, "Oh, what are you doing with the sticks?" And Kermit goes, "You'll see." And Croaker goes, "I love it when I don't know what's going on."
Right.
And I was like, "That's awesome."
But yeah, also I feel like there's been a montage, just really quick, in every movie we've watched so far. Like a weird, like out of place montage.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just the sign of the times, but it's happened in every film that we've watched.
There's been a couple common themes that have come up. Yeah.
But yeah, so we find out the bad guy's a bio teacher, and he's just doing dissections, right? And this whole scene is the last of these big nostalgic things where I'm like, there was a dissection and Kermit was there.
Oh, you remember that?
I do not know where I saw that. And maybe I made it up as a kid. And then I rewatched it and I was like, oh my God.
It's this.
It's this.
Yeah.
And it was this whole scene. Because I remember this guy being like, ooh, so we're gonna cut you. And then it's like they all
like the chant.
do this thing. Yeah. And so the stakes are really, really high for the frogs. But the kids like really don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And that's when they start chanting. They're like, let him go.
Yeah.
And so they essentially they all get captured, and it's just a constant back and forth of, all right, one saving another one saving another one.
Yeah.
And eventually, I can't remember if Kermit speaks to him before they have the little fight, or if it's after.
It's after, because he basically wins the fight, the biology teacher. Like, the frog's about to be killed.
Yeah.
Right.
And then finally Kermit speaks English.
Yeah, so Kermit speaks to the guy.
Yeah, which is what stops
everything.
Because the fight is also a nod back to the
movie,
film.
right?
Yes.
In the movies.
Yes.
When Kermit's like, I want to do this, you see him doing it at the end.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Hollywood. But
right. And then also, this is like the kind of introduction of like, they finally spoke to humans, and that's how they're going to start the Muppet Show and all this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is another like this weird nuance of like these undertones that like if you don't really pay attention, then you're just like, oh, this could just pass as a normal movie, and then you think about it and you're like, oh, this is like the introduction to everything.
See, I just saw it as a normal movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But so yeah, everyone kind of chants, including the assistant to science teacher lady.
Yeah.
And there's this weird flashback of the biology teacher getting called Froggy Pants.
Oh, right.
Because he like believes that these frogs, because the frog talked to him when he was dissecting it as a kid.
And no one believed him.
And no one believed him. And now he gets like this, like
ultimate validation.
Yeah, he gets validation.
Yeah, he's like, oh my God, I was right.
And immediately the conflict is resolved. He's like, go.
Yeah.
Go do your thing.
I
have been resolved of my like bullying. I'm good.
Yeah.
So then Wilson drives him back to the swamp, and they all sing. It's very fun.
Yeah.
And then we go back to present day Kermit, and he wraps up the story saying that there's nothing like the people you grew up with. And that really resonated with me a lot, because obviously, like in college, like you meet all these people, like you guys are great. I love you guys both so much. But there is nothing like the people at home where I like go home and I'm like, man, I still have these people that I don't have to talk to every day to like still be friends with them. It's just like that idea kind of resonates.
That's true. It's a very nostalgic movie, which is
exactly.
It's a nice little ending.
And then, dude, you end with Horace to Fly.
Yes,
and
you
he
do.
is like scatting, and he sends us out. Oh, it's awesome. And then they have this. Then they have all like the outtakes at the end.
Fake little bloopers and
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
And that's pretty much the whole movie. It's very straightforward. You get in, you get out. It's Kermit's origin story, and it's incredible. So going into final thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll start with this. So it's probably my favorite watch of, the ones we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely the most nostalgic. There were these moments where I saw it and I was like, oh my God, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely underrated, and I really appreciated this, like the origin story aspect of it. These are all kind of things I've touched on. And for God's sakes, just please, Disney, put it on Disney Plus.
It's so weird.
More
It's
people
not.
need to see this and be exposed to this.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So final thoughts.
I will say final thoughts again. As someone who's never seen it, I would say it's easily the best watch of all the stuff we've done on the show so far. Though probably the least nostalgic for me.
Sure.
Because it was my first viewing ever.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do think it's incredibly underrated. And the fact that you can't find it anywhere, like it's only on YouTube in segments, is like criminal. Like this movie's way better than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think I would be like, yeah, if you've never seen it, go watch it. Like I would recommend Kermit Swamp Ears.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, this is one of the first movies that I've ever seen. I can't count how many times I've seen this movie. Definitely, I can't count it on my fingers because it's much more than that. It's like Nick was saying too. There were key elements of this film that were so nostalgic for me too, and it's just it does such an amazing job of I think just portraying what the Muppets become, and I think they were able to do that because it was made, also in 2002, which after all, so much of the Muppets had been established.
Right.
And I think Jim Henson would be proud of this film had he seen it.
I think so.
Yeah. And again, it works. I think you're right. It works as a nostalgic thing. It also works for someone who doesn't know what a Muppet is.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And now I'm excited to introduce you to
exactly.
Muppets,
Now I'm like, this is my intro to this world. I'm so excited.
It's cool that you're seeing it from that perspective too, of like seeing, okay, this is the backstory, this is the origin. Now let's see what.
Let's see where this goes instead of let's take a step backwards.
Yeah. And one final thought on Kermit Swamp Ears. I can't believe this got greenlit. Actually, in this case, I can.
Yeah,
I can believe it. I can fully believe it. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Jonah, as always, for being here.
Thank
It's
you.
very, very
Yes,
exciting.
thank you
First
so
guest.
I'm honored to be the first guest.
It's a lot of fun.
This is a blast.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you,
very
guys.
Thank you for
excited.
giving us a good movie to watch.
I'm
so far.
Very,
Yeah.
very cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you all for listening. It's been a very, very fun ride. First guest episode.
Oh,
Very
should we touch
exciting.
on what's going to happen next week?
Yeah, I was going to say, tune in next week for Flushed Away.
Yes.
And yeah, we're very excited. We're going to have another guest, hopefully, for that episode.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in to I Can't Believe This Got Greenlit.